The world often called Lady Diana a commoner, an ordinary young woman who suddenly stepped into the royal family. The fairy tale story was painted as if she were a modern Cinderella, but if we look closely at history, that label was deeply misleading. Diana was not a common girl. She was born into the Spencer family, one of the oldest and most influential aristocratic families in all of England. The Spencers can be traced back as far as the 15th century. They were not just wealthy landowners. They were deeply entrenched in British politics, in the military, and even had long-standing ties to the royal court itself. In fact, if you dig into her ancestry, the Spencers were linked to King Charles II and King James II of the Stuart dynasty. So while Diana was not a princess by birth, she carried centuries of noble blood in her veins. Now, let's compare that to the Windsors. The name Windsor sounds so ancient, so royal. But in truth, the name is relatively new. It was created in 1917 by King George V, who changed the royal family name from House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Why the change? Because at that time, World War I was raging. Britain was at war with Germany, and the royal family's German-sounding name became a problem. To distance themselves from their German roots, the king chose a new, thoroughly English name, Windsor, inspired by Windsor Castle. So, in terms of lineage and history, the Spencers were deeply English and deeply aristocratic long before the Windsors ever existed as a royal name. This is why the famous saying exists, the Spencers were noble before the Windsors were royal. And history proves it true. Diana herself became historic. She was the first Princess of Wales in more than 300 years who did not come from royal blood. Traditionally, the title belonged only to women from other royal families. But Diana, an English aristocrat, changed that tradition forever. She may not have been a princess at birth, but she was every inch a noble woman, raised at Althorpe House, surrounded by symbols of England's old aristocracy, with roots that ran deeper than the family she married into. So when the world labeled her a commoner, it simply wasn't accurate. Diana wasn't just a girl from the people who married a prince. She was an ancient noblewoman, marrying into a much newer royal family. This is the paradox of Diana. She was called the people's princess, loved for her humanity, her warmth, her connection to ordinary lives. But in truth, her bloodline carried the weight of England's oldest nobility, even older than the Windsors themselves. And perhaps that's the true magic of Diana. A woman who was never born a princess, but who carried herself with the dignity of an aristocrat and the heart of the people. The perfect balance that made the whole world fall in love with her.